how would you define leadership and what it is? So I do like this definition that we have here from your book. And what it states is that leadership is essentially a process where a person has a vision and is able to influence others through their activities and their outcomes in the way that they desire to reach that shared vision. So we're going to look at two different kinds of leadership styles. And one of the things I would argue is, when people talk about leadership and the dichotomy between leadership and management, you often get this argument that management is somehow bad and leadership is somehow good. And I would argue that there are times that you need both. In that same way, and we're going to talk more about management later, I would state that the following two forms of leadership we're looking at, which are transactional and transformational, there are times and benefits to use either form of leadership. And that if you are truly a strong leader, you're able to use the toolbox you have in front of you to encourage behaviors that you are looking for through both kinds of methods and actions, depending on what you need in the moment. So first, let's look at transactional leadership. Transactional leadership tends to be a quid pro quo kind of system where you give something for me, I give something for you. So for example, if you turn in all your work in time, then you're going to get a certain grade. So there's an exchange going on. If you meet your budget for the quarter, then I'm going to give you a bonus. So it's often incentive based. It's often extrinsic motivation through extrinsic rewards, whether it's pay, time off, better shifts. Maybe I give you a better section at the restaurant and which tables you're serving. Maybe I give you a free meal at the end of the night. So I'm promising you something in return for certain behaviors that I'm looking for. And this is this transactional approach. There's a transaction between two parties, the leader and the person that they're leading. Now, the reason why a lot of people say this is bad is that this is only short term. You're not going to get long-term changes because you have to continue to incentivize the same behaviors because, well, I still need you to meet the budget. I still need you to greet tables within 30 seconds. I still need you to do X, Y, Z. So I have to continue to offer incentives, and sometimes I have to continue to offer bigger incentives. However, where I say, yes, this is short term, yes, it is doing something by maintaining a certain behavior within a moment, it can be very powerful for short term changes that you need or something that has to happen in the moment, whether it's during a crisis or it's simply during a single shift. So it's about setting goals and behaviors that are measurable and something that we can actually achieve, and then rewarding for those achievements. And I think there's a value in that. So for example, if I'm having a pre-shift meeting with all my servers and I know that we have extra tilapia that we really need to sell tonight, and so the chef made a special that has tilapia and I want to sell it out so we don't have a lot of food waste at the end of the night. So I'm going to encourage my employees to sell the tilapia by having a competition, and whichever server sells the most tilapia specials in that shift will get a free tilapia special themselves, or a free meal or a free dessert or something like that. So I am doing a transactional form of leadership because I have a specific need in the moment that I'm trying to meet. Do I need to long-term change to have people always sell the tilapia special? No, but what I might do is do transformational leadership to teach and train and encourage people to use selling tactics in order to encourage price per guest increases, so we make more money for the restaurant and they also make bigger tips. And so that's where you could use a combination of transactional and transformational leadership. So this next form, transformational leadership, states rather than having a transaction between two individuals where you do something for me, you get something in return, highly extrinsic, highly short-term, transformational leadership tends to be intrinsic motivation and long-term change. I'm going to facilitate a way for you to learn and grow through the leadership I'm providing to make better decisions. And so I don't even have to offer an incentive because you're intrinsically motivated to meet the vision that we have set forward and that we're on the same trajectory. This is how we get people to behave in a certain way, even when the manager leaves. So true leadership states that a leader does not have to be in the room for the followers to actually exhibit behaviors that they're looking for. And that comes from transformational leadership. So in general, the things that you're trying to do through transformational leadership are help people develop and grow to their full potential, become leaders themselves. You're going to encourage them to show those good behaviors because it's beneficial for everyone. You have to have a lot of charisma. You have to create individual relationships with each person, and you have to stimulate them in a way that will continue to have them grow and develop over time. So this can be very challenging because you have to know yourself, and then you have to know each individual employee, what intrinsically motivates them, what's important to that person, where they are in their stage of life. So someone who is young, unmarried, single, comes to work all the time, picks up extra shifts, is constantly a go-getter, there's a different level of responsibility and expectations you can put for that person versus someone who maybe has a new family, kids at home, they have a lot of responsibilities, and they need more flexibility of schedule. So what motivates each of those two individuals is very different, but the job still has to get done. So how do you manage those different needs to have them still develop and grow based on the needs that they have within their intrinsic motivation? Part of this comes back to, we're going to look at this model here through these 5 common leadership practices when it comes to transformational leadership. One is that you have to challenge the process. So what does it mean to challenge the process? What that essentially says is, I understand that the answer is no to something. Well, can I do this? No. Can I spend more capital investment to buy new furniture, fixture, and equipment? No, that's the hard answer. But as a leader, I say, okay, well, how can I work creatively within the system to change something to have a yes? So my employees need to have a set schedule, but I have some employees that need a little flexibility. What can I do to change the process to make that happen? So that's part of that transformational leadership, thinking outside the box, coming up with creative solutions. Have a vision in place and share that vision with others so that they share it with you and they want to accomplish the same goals. Giving people the power to act, whether that's through empowerment, trusting them with new responsibilities, teaching them that growth and development aspect. It's letting them know that they have value even when you're not in the room. So you're not just doing the mundane, repeatable task over and over again. I am trusting you to do these things to meet our shared vision, that you can act without necessarily having to ask for permission every time, taking that initiative, showing your own leadership qualities and characteristics. Model the way. If you want something to happen, you have to display it yourself. You want your employees to be on time, you better be on time. In fact, if you want your employees to be there before the shift, you should get there significantly before the shift, because any behavior that you model, they will mimic, because you are telling them that this is the behavior you actually encourage, even if you say one thing but you're doing another. So you have to always show the behaviors that you want instilled in your employees. And then encourage the heart. That again goes to that growth and development, that empowerment, that shared vision. Encourage them to grow and build relationship with you, get connected to you, but also get connected to the job and their own full potential. So some common traits of successful leaders, these are things you just see across the board. It doesn't mean if you don't have this trait now, you couldn't get it over time, but it's just some things to consider. When we look and we study leaders and say, what do they have in common? These are the common traits that we see. This might surprise you a little bit, but the first thing on the list says high ego strength. What that means is not necessarily that you're pompous or narcissistic. What it means is that you're self-assured and that you are decisive and that you're willing to stand by the decisions you make and hold accountability for those decisions. So if you make a mistake, you own it. That's part of having that high ego strength, that you're basically having to tell people what to do. You're having to get them on board. You're having to convince them. You're having to negotiate. You have to do a lot of really challenging things. And in order to withstand the brunt of all those challenges that are facing you, you have to truly believe in yourself and have this high level, what we call ego. You have to think strategically, long-term visions, long-term plans. You're not making a decision for just right now. You're making a decision that will impact the organization and yourself for a long period of time after that. So you have to be able to see the big picture in addition to the details so you can make better strategic decisions. Part of that is always looking to the future. Yes, I know that there's something happening right in this moment, but I'm always looking 2 or 3 steps ahead because I need to think strategically and I need to be future focused. So COVID-19 hits, I have to let go of half my employees. Which employees do I let go? How do I let them go? Do I try to keep them on board somehow? I'm always trying to think about the contingency plans of what's happening next. How can I think strategically and what are we going to do in the future to continue on? Believe in the fundamental principles of human nature. What that essentially states is that you're realistic and you create relationships with people. You understand intrinsic and extrinsic motivations. You understand how people behave, why they behave that way, and how they're going to interact with you. So if you think about it this way, if someone comes in to the workplace as a manager and they're constantly screaming and yelling at their employees, people are going to naturally react to that in a very negative way. So you have to understand these qualities about human nature. But by the same token and principle, if you come in and every time you're like, oh, whatever, I just want you to like me, I want to be nice, I want to be friends, they're not going to respect you either. So it's about understanding that balance and understanding where you fit and flow into that grouping. Being able to make strong connections with people, both as employees, networks, peers, all across the board, and that goes hand in hand with political astuteness. Understanding, again, the tact of the words you're saying, when to make alliances, when to let people go, when to not connect to people, when to say, you and I have been in this for a long haul, but we're no longer helping each other, that we need to sever the ties that are between us. And that comes with understanding strong connections and the political astuteness. And then use the power of efficacy as well as efficiency for the good of larger organizations. So you have a broader picture in mind. You are not only thinking about yourself, but the entire organization. It goes back to, if you look at the Marine traits, they talk about unselfishness. This can go hand in hand with that. You have to be a little selfish as a leader, part of that high ego strength, because you have to protect yourself too, but you also have to use that power that you have for the good and betterment of the larger organization. And then you'll see some examples of well-known leaders that are considered good leaders. Peter Drucker, considered the father of American management. Bill Marriott, Horst Schultz, who we talked about him way back in the beginning of the class with the Ritz-Carlton, as well as Herb Keller, who's known for Southwest Airlines. So what could you do right now to start exhibiting leadership qualities, to start growing in leadership, and to set yourself on the path for that? So leadership takes time to develop. It is not something that is just going to snap. Some people are better at it than others. Some people have the traits more than others. Some people already exhibit it, but it's because they practice it. So some of the things you can do right now is keep yourself on a schedule and driven to complete the things you need to have, initiate what needs to be done, and stick to it. So having deadlines for yourself, knowing if I have homework due, I'm going to set up my time so that I'm not doing it 10 minutes before the deadline and then asking for an extension. So if you're a leader, you're already thinking ahead. Again, it's that strategic thinking, it's that future thinking. So part of that is time management and creating a schedule for yourself and then sticking to it. And if you don't stick to it, ask yourself why and what you need to change in order to have that happen. Do you need to create a better schedule? Do you need to practice time management? Do you need to maybe stop doing some things that are taking you away from the things that you need to accomplish? Another thing is that if you look across the board at leaders around the world, okay, anyone who starts getting into top management, we're talking VPs, senior level positions, and you look at the people that are in those roles, they are all extremely fit and take care of their body. And the reason for this is if you cannot take care of the most important thing in your life, which is your own world, your own body, your own lifestyle, then how can you take care of a large corporation, or how can you take care of other people? So leaders tend to eat healthy, exercise, and get the sleep that they need in order to perform well. So if you really want to consider yourself a leader, you have to start with yourself. And that means taking care of yourself, being fit, being trim, eating right, exercising, having the energy you need to actually accomplish what you need to do. Also studying, saying that comes back to prioritizing. What are you saying is most important, and are you focusing on the things that are most important in your life? Communication, learning how to communicate. This takes a lot of skills because now, especially with social media, email communication, you don't necessarily get body language, you can't use facial structure. So you have to learn how to communicate with people in a way that, again, is tactful and will be accepted. It's something I constantly work on. When I first started teaching, my emails tended to be relatively curt. I was just trying to get the answers out. I was thinking in a very different way. And what I quickly found was that the message I was trying to convey was not really being accepted because it was being taken in a different light. And so I had to learn over time to change the way I wrote and the way I communicated with people in order to have more impact on the people that I was trying to help and influence with my shared vision. Reading, constantly being up to date, looking at news, looking at what's going on in the industry, not being caught flat-footed, looking at future trends. This again goes back to strategic thinking and future-based thinking. finding mentors or people that are going to be good influences on you, and then managing money wisely. You might not know this, but a lot of organizations will not let you move into management positions unless you have good credit. So they will actually check your credit score, because you are now, if you cannot manage money in your own personal life, how are you going to manage money for a big corporation or a big organization? And so that's actually one of the crucial habits that you should get into now, is managing your money and not spending it in a way that you don't have the money.